So we have that case in Richmond a few years ago of a lot in Windsor Farms. Now, I don't know if you know Windsor Farms, but it's an elegant, expensive subdivision near the James River in the city off of Carey Street, River Road. You know, it's a very upscale neighborhood, old brick Georgian mansions, big yards and all that. Well, there was an article in the paper just this weekend, this past weekend, in which a couple had put their home, opened their home up to the reporter, and they took all these pictures of these beautiful gardens made by a guy named Gillette. He was a landscape architect in the early 20th century. Gillette gardens are highly desirable. They're really kind of neat. They're beautiful. He did all kinds of interesting things with fountains, and it's just really lovely stuff. They add a lot to the value of a house to say you've got a Gillette garden. Well, these guys listed their house and had a Gillette garden. And these gardens in the back, beautiful gardens, and they put pictures of it in Homes magazines, and they did beautiful color flyers focusing prominently on the gardens. Buyers enter into a contract to buy this house, and they did something incredibly smart. They got a survey. Now, why do you need a survey of a residential subdivision lot? Well, we've seen why you can need a survey. Those of you who remember the case from the peninsula, the survey was central to that issue. And reference to a survey would have saved that realtor a whole lot of trouble. This guy, the buyers got a survey, and what they found was that the property line actually was like this. Okay? A substantial part of the garden, and this is not to scale, but a big part of the garden was on the neighbor's property. So they said, well, we wanted the gardens, we're only getting about half of them. Well, look, we've had that fence up there, and there was a fence. Okay? So these people had enclosed their neighbor's yard. And they said, well, we've had that fence there for 40 years. Clearly, you've got adverse possession and all that. Well, look, I don't want a lawsuit with my neighbor. I want you to give me good title. He says, well, look, we're going to give you exactly what we promised to give you. Lot, block, and section. That's what the contract said. That's what we're going to give you. No, no, no. You represented that I was getting the gardens. In fact, that was the central part of your advertising. And you can't give me the gardens. The seller refused to allow the buyer out of the contract to authorize the return of the earnest money deposit. The buyer took the seller to court along with the realtor because the realtor's holding the money, and it was the realtor's advertising that constituted the misrepresentation. And the judge took about 3 minutes to say, give him his money and let him go and just be glad he's not suing you for damages, because he had spent a lot of money in reliance on everything that had happened. Now, how many of you would catch that? I mean, when your clients show you their house and you see the fencing and all that, do you run and get a survey before you show that the gardens? No. All I'm telling you is that sometimes it can make sense for you to make inquiries of your clients. Because you may find that you've got a situation where an inquiry can save your bacon. And I think I've told you about this as well. There was the house we owned before the one we do now, which we bought when I didn't even know we were looking to move. I'm not kidding. My wife dragged me to see this house. I did not even know we were moving. This is kind of the shape of the lot. The house was here. A driveway came off here and came down to the side of the house. And there was a retaining wall that ran like this. The lot sloped heavily down toward the Chickahominy River back over here. Well, the neighbor's fence ran here. Okay? And there were pretty ornamental trees and a big expanse of lawn here, and guess who cut it? I'm going to run a lawnmower down here and leave tall grass here and short grass? No. This guy ultimately died of a tumor. I cut their grass for 2 years. But I always cut this. I trimmed around the trees and the fence and all that. Now, anybody who went to, and there was a big perennial garden over here that was on our lot. When we went to sell that house, I made darn sure that the realtor knew where the boundary line was. Because wouldn't it have been easy for the realtor to look at this and to see pretty yard and a fence and assume that whoever bought it was going to get this stuff? We had purposely I identified a tree. There was a tree with a Y trunk in the woods back there, and it was almost exactly on the property line. And so I took her out here, and we walked it, and I said, look, you need to know this. We don't own about 40 feet. It was a lot of yard. Don't ask me why these folks enclosed their yard this way, but they did. I said, in some places it's much wider back here. This isn't drawn exactly right. It was more like this. But in the narrowest divide, it was 25, 30, 40 feet. And she said, I'm glad you told me that. Because it would have been very easy for me to say something as simple as, and these beautiful ornamental trees, and this nice expanse of lawn, and all that. So I think it's worth your while to walk the boundary line of the property with your owner, or at least have your owner try to identify the boundary line. And you may learn a lot, even in the routine subdivision. They may actually say, well, you know what, we think this guy's, I think maybe we have built over on this guy's lot, or I'm not really sure that this fence is entirely on our property, or things like that. They may not know, but you can ask.